Okay, so if you're watching this, you are a quit facility, and there is an RN coverage component, and this is what this video is about. So, the QUIP RN coverage. QUIP RN hours are hours that are above the CMS 8 hours of in-person RN coverage. They must be scheduled non-concurrently with the mandated 8 hours and must be direct care. So, everyone knows that in order to meet regulatory guidelines, we have to have 8 hours consecutively of an RN in the facility every single day. So uh, we always have to meet that. The QUIP RN hours are going to be hours that exceed that. So let's say the DON works 8 to 4:30 and there's 8 hours of CMS coverage there. But in order to claim the QUIP hours, we must have an additional 8 hours of direct care RN hours. That does not run at the same time as the time of the um, CMS hours. So any RN hours that are scheduled at the same time as the required CMS 8 hours do not count towards the QUIP 8 hours. So example, if the DON is working 8 to 4:30, hours from any other RN working during that same time period do not count toward QUIP. So again, if you have a treatment nurse that's an RN that works at the same time as the DON, we can't use that does not meet the 16 hours because we got to have a total of 16 hours in a day, every day, and but 8 of those must always be direct care, and they can't run concurrently. So any hours that are direct care RN hours that are concurrent should, which means they're scheduled at the same time. Concurrent means they're scheduled at the same time. Only counts as 1 hour. So, example, you have 2 RNs working the 10 to 6 shift. We can only claim 8 hours of RN for QUIP because although we have a total of 16 hours, because we have 2 RNs working that shift, we can only claim 8 hours for QUIP because they only count. Doesn't matter how many RNs are working that hour. They only count hours, not RNs. So there are 2 categories of RNs that will be used in this process: direct care and non-direct care. So direct care RNs are charge nurses, treatment nurse, weekend RN, and also telehealth. And we'll get into telehealth in detail later. So any direct care RN hours can count towards CMS, the CMS mandated 8 hours per day, and the 8 hours of QUIP. So let's say you have a weekend RN who has worked 16 hours on a Saturday or Sunday. They can count towards both the CMS 8 hours and the 8 additional hours of QUIP because they're considered direct care. Also, direct care RNs, it's a requirement that the direct care be the additional 8 hours for QUIP. And also PBJ lunch requirements apply, so which means a lunch period of 30 minutes will be automatically taken out if not entered in the day force. So if, let's say, you're the DON and your hours in day force are 8 to 4, so that's 8 hours, right? Well, automatically day force is going to take out 30 minutes for that lunch, so that's actually 7.5 hours. So be sure when our hours are in day force that we add at least a 30-minute cushion for lunch. So in that case, you would need to be from 8 to 4:30. So that would give you 8.5 hour clock time. But when the 30 minutes for your lunch is taken out, we have the 8 hours. Now, for telehealth, and once we get into that, telehealth hours do not have the lunch taken out. So if you say your telehealth from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., it's going to be 3 hours. They never take out the lunch period for telehealth. And a reminder, any concurrent hours, which means um, any concurrent direct care hours, only count as 1 hour for each scheduled hour. So if you have two RNs working the same hour from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., you can only count 1 hour. Even if you have 16 RNs working that hour, you can only count it as 1 hour. Non-direct care RNs, those are your DONs, ADONs, MDS. And if they are working their primary duties, which means you're doing DON stuff, you're doing ADON stuff, you're doing MDS stuff, these positions will only count towards the CMS mandated 8 hours per day. If they are working their primary duties, hours worked never counts towards the additional hours needed for QIP. See examples on the next slide. So example, a DON works from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which equals 11.5 hours because we took out the half hour for lunch. During that time, they only did their DON duties. The CMS mandate of 8 hours is easily met, right? Easily. But the additional 3.5 hours do not count towards QIP because they are considered non-direct care. So if you're doing your duties as DON, doesn't matter if you're there 24 hours a day. If you're doing DON duties, you can only count 8 of those hours a day, and that only goes towards the CMS, the regulatory side. The additional 8 hours we need for QIP do not count if those non-direct care RNs are doing their normal duties. But there are times when a normally non-direct care RN, their hours can count towards QIP hours. So example, the DON works from 7A to 7P. From 7A to 4P, they work performing their normal DON duties. But from 4P to 7P, they worked as a nurse on the floor due to a call-in. So the CMS mandate of 8 hours is met from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we will be able to claim the 3 hours from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. as direct care since they performed a direct care duty. Now, the little caveat here is the DON will need to make an adjustment in day force to change their duty from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., and we'll cover that in a later slide. So RN hours. We want at least 16 hours of RN coverage in 24-hour period. From midnight to midnight, we need 16 hours of RN coverage, with at least 8 of those hours being direct care. So if you look at this circle here, like a clock, this is a 24-hour clock here. So you've got, in the blue, you've got the CMS 8 hours, which means it's mandated. That can be any RN in the building, DON, ADON, MDS. It can even be charge nurse, weekend supervisor, whatever. Excuse me. But the CMS 8 hours can be any RN. The QIP 8 hours that is needed, that can only be direct care, which means, like I said, charge nurse, treatment nurse, weekend RN, and then of course telehealth. So telehealth can be considered the direct care, and again we'll get into telehealth later. But so if you're looking at a clock, the goal for this program is that in those 24 hours there's an RN providing 16 hours of care. Like I said, If it's non-direct, ADON, DON, MDS, eight of those hours can go to CMS hours, and then the additional 8 hours of QIP must be direct care. Just, I know I've said that 15 times, but I just got to stress that. So 16 hours of non-direct RN do not help us in any way. Salaried RNs. Their normal scheduled hours that we use for PBJ credit needs to be entered in the day force. So typically DON, ADON, MDS, if you're salaried, if you'll just let HR know what your normal schedule is. So normally let's say you work 8 to 5, and you take an hour lunch. So and that will be automatically put into day force for you. And if we need to adjust later, we can, and I'll show you that later as well. But that will automatically be put in. So let your HR know that your normal schedule, and it's probably already there, but just your normal Monday through Friday, the days you work as DON, ADON, MDS, and they will put those in there. But remember, we got to at least have a 30-minute lunch mixed in there. So if you work, let's say you do work 8 to 4, it needs to be 8 to 4:30. So we always have those, but 8 solid hours. Direct care RN hours will be counted if they are concurrent. Okay, sorry. Direct care hours can or will be counted if they are concurrent with non-direct care hours after the CMS mandate of 8 hours is met. So here's the example. The DON works from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. performing DON duties. 8 hours of CMS are met at 4:30 p.m. But you also have an RN charge nurse working from 2 to 10. We cannot count the charge nurse hours from 2 to 4:30 because they are concurrent with the CMS mandated hours. But we can count their time towards QIP direct care hours from 4:30 to 10. Even though the DON is also there from 4:30 to 9, those hours exceed the 8-hour concurrent requirements, and any direct care hours after the 8 CMS hours can be counted. So if you're the DON there working 13 hours and you're doing your duties, after you reach those 8 hours, we can count those QIP hours if there's an additional RN in the facility. So facilities must provide 16 hours of RN coverage on or at least 90% of the days within the reporting period, which is a month. So if it's a 31-day month, we have to have 28 days of 16 hours, 16 RN hours. It's the same for 30. If it's a 29-day month, we have to have 27 days of additional RN hours. If it's a 28-day month, we have to have 26 days. So in general, we only have 3 days to play with. You can only have 3 days in a month that you can miss or not hit the 16 hours. Each Monday, you're going to be asked to provide your anticipated RN schedules for the next 7 days, which should be the next week. Sorry. So if the DON, ADON, MDS, weekend RN, treatment nurse, we need the exact hours those are scheduled to work. If it's shift work or a charge nurse, just need yes for those days that are scheduled. And of course, we're going to be looking at RN hours every day. There's someone always looking. But let me give you, show you an example on how to do these anticipated RN schedule. So this is what I sent out, and that will be sent out every week. So I sent this out on the 7th, and what I'm looking for is the next week. So I want to look at from the 11th of Saturday through the 18th of Saturday. And then next week on the 14th, I'm going to be looking at the 18th through the 25th. So it's always a week ahead, and we want to look at your anticipated um, RN schedule so we can see where we might could need to supplement every once in a while. So every week this is going to be sent out, and there's been some confusion on how to do this, but if you look over here, it says enter hours, especially for this group here: DON, RN ADON, RN MDS, RN treatment nurse, weekend RN. Enter the hours if scheduled. So if you're DON, we need to see something like 8 to 5. Just don't say yes. It needs to be like 8 to 5. Let me fix this real quick. So 8 to 5. Whoops. Change that again. So we got 8 to 5. Well, let me change this up a little bit. So Monday through Friday, we got 8 to 5, right? For the DON. 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5. And then you have your weekend RN, and they work, I don't know, 10A to 6P. And same here. Okay, so we got those hours entered up there. Now, if they're an LVN ADON, LVN MDS, LVN treatment nurse, don't even you don't have to add them here. We're just looking at RNs. And then if you have here below, if you have any charge nurses, you're just going to enter yes if you have any 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6, 6A to 6P, or 6P to 6A, and you just put a Y there. So yes, we have a 2 to 10 that day, yes, yes. We have a 10 to 6 here, and we have a 6 to 2 here. Okay? So then, once you look at this, then you need to come down here and figure out what your anticipated telehealth hours need to be. And we'll, of course, we get into telehealth a little bit more later, but you need to schedule it. Remember, because they count as direct care RN hours. So here we have 10A to 6P for Sunday. So that's 8 hours. And that's a weekend RN considered direct care. So we don't have to worry about the CMS and all that stuff. So we have our 8 hours met of regulatory. But now we need the additional 8 hours of telehealth. Okay? So, but it needs to be outside of this time frame here. It can't be from 10A to 6P because it can't run concurrent. So we could put in here 1A to 9A. So that's 8 hours, right? And remember, if it's telehealth, it does not take away the automatic lunch. So we have 8 hours here. We have 8 hours here. We have 16 hours. So we're covered. We're going to meet 16 hours for Sunday. So then we come over here. We're looking at Monday. So we got the DON working 8 to 5. There's 8 hours there. And then we have a charge nurse working from 2 to 10. So we have so from 8 to 2 p.m., 8 a.m. because the DON's there, to 2 p.m. when the charge nurse gets there, we have what? 6 hours? We have 6 hours of RN coverage. that is non-concurrent. But from 2 to 5, because remember the DON's there from till 5 o'clock, from 2 to 5 we can't count those hours because they're running concurrent. So from 2 to 5 for the 2 to 10 charge nurse and 8 to 5 there, we can't count those hours. But from 5 to 10, we can count those hours. So remember, we have from 8 to 2. That's, I'm sorry, we got the DON hours counted from 8 to 5. So there's 8 hours. And then the 2 to 10 charge nurse, we can't count 2 to 5, but we can count 5 to 10. So there's another 5 hours. So 8 and 5, that's 13. But remember, we need 16. So we could come in here. We need 3 hours of telehealth. So we could say from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is when we're going to be on telehealth call. Because remember, it's the telehealth has to be outside of times when there's an RN in the building. It does not count. Telehealth will not count if it is during the time that an RN is in the building. It's not going to help you reach those additional hours. So from 4 to 8, there's 4 hours. 8 to 5, there's another 12 hours. I'm sorry, another 8 hours. That gives us 12. And then from 5 to 10 for the 2 to 10 charge nurse is another 5 hours. So we have 17 hours that day. So we're good to go. And of course, coming over here, it's the same thing. It can be the same thing. So your telehealth could be 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then, so that would all be the same there. But then we come to Thursday. So again, we have the DON working 8 to 5. There's our 8 hours. And then there is 10 to 6. That's another 2 hours because we're only going from midnight to midnight. So for the 16th, the charge nurse comes in at 10 and works till 6 a.m. the next day. But we can only count 2 of those hours because it goes from midnight to midnight. So right now, from 8 to 5, there's 8 hours. From 10 to midnight, there's 2 hours. So we have 10 hours. So we need 6 more hours of telehealth that we can supplement with telehealth. So you can do that any other time except from 8 to 5 and except from 10 to midnight. So we could say, again, we need what I say, 6 hours. So we could say for this one, we're going to do 4A to 8A. There's 4 hours, right? So there's 4, 2 is 6, 8 is 14 hours. So we need 2 more hours still. So you can split up telehealth. So let's say we're doing 4 to 8. And then we're also going to do telehealth from 5P, or let's say 7P to 10P. All right? Because you can do telehealth more than once a day. Telehealth does not have to be consecutive. It just needs to be there. So, okay. So now we have 4 hours of telehealth from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Then we got 3 more hours of telehealth from 7P to 10P. So there's 7 hours of direct care RN. Then we have the 10 to 6 charge nurse. There's 2 more hours. So now we're up to 9 hours of direct care RN. And then we have our 8 hours of CMS or DON. So again, we have 17 hours. So then let's go to Friday. So Friday, we have 8 to 5. Still the DON, 8 hours, right? But remember, Your charge nurse here, 10 to 6 on Thursday, worked 10 to 6, and we could only count 10 p to midnight on the 16th. But on the 17th, we're going to be able to count the hours from midnight to 6 a.m. So there's 6 hours right there, because that's going to carry over to the 17th. So midnight to 6 a.m. is 6 hours. And then you have 8 to 5. And that is 8 hours. So we have 14 hours. We only need 2 more hours, right? Now, those 2 more hours, if you can't do the 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. because that 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. is going to overlap. So what you can do then is, like, let's do the 7p to 10p. So there's 3 hours of telehealth, direct care. We have 6 hours of carryover from 10 to 6, which is direct care. So there's 9, plus the 8 hours of DON, 17 hours. So that's how you will look at that and schedule that. So you'll see where your RN hours are, and then you'll adjust, then you'll enter your scheduled telehealth. You go ahead and schedule that out right there. And you'll send that in. It's either going to come from me or Shannon Romero. You'll send that in, and then we can evaluate and see how we're looking for that next week. And we can then, if there's some shortages, we can help you out. Now, another scenario that we could face is, let's look at this one. On Saturday, let's say we have 2 to 10, 6 to 2 and 2 to 10, and a 10 to 6 weekend soup RN. All right, so we got 8 hours here, and that's meeting our CMS mandate or whatever. And then we have 16 hours of 6 to 2 to 2 to 10. Now, we got, there's 8 hours for 6 to 2, and 2 to 10, there's 8 hours. So there's 16 hours total. So the weekend RN, even though it's concurrent with some of these hours, we're still meeting the 16 hours because if you look at a clock, of the 24 hours, there was 16 hours that an RN was providing direct care or supervision. Doesn't matter. There's 16 hours currently there. So there is no need for telehealth hours for Saturday because we're covering the 16 hours. Now, one thing we have to be sure on, it has to be tight, and you have to let all your RNs know that if they are scheduled to work a shift, we need 8 hours, not 7 hours and 45 minutes. We need 8 solid hours. So they need to be sure and clock in at the right time for lunch, clock out for lunch, clock in, and we've got to be sure that we get those 8 hours. So if they're scheduled from 2 to 10, they need to come in, 1:45, get report, blah, 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 and then stay over till 10:15 to also give report to the next shift. So from 1:45 to 10:15 is 8.5 hours. Take out the 30-minute lunch, and there we have the 8 hours. So we have to be sure that, including with lunches, that all of these direct care hours are that we're scheduled to have the 8 hours of 8 solid hours. Can't be 7 hours and 55 minutes. It needs to be 8 hours. So for the 10 to 6, it should be 10 to 6:30, 10 to 6:30, 10 to 6:30, because we got to. There is a mandated lunch that will come out. Even if they don't take it, it will be pulled out. So really, this weekend RN, if they're working if they clock in at 10 and leave at 6, we're only getting 7.5 hours. So we need to be sure and that the lunches are added, that the time is added before or after, or a mixture of that. So once you complete that, you'll send it to Shannon or myself, and then we have a tracking form, and then like I said, we'll follow up with your compliance nurse, ADO, and yourselves to see what we can do to help you get some additional RN hours if needed. So that's that. Excuse me. So going more in depth to telehealth. So a way for an RN to provide direct care RN level of service to the facility remotely, we can use telehealth. Now it must be use a synchronized audio video connection for encounters, and you only need to be available and able to connect via telehealth within 15 minutes of being contacted by the LVN or facility staff. So that means, let's say you're on telehealth from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., 4 hours, right? So you just got to be available. You don't have to be connected and performing 4 hours of telehealth continuously. You just have to be available and able to connect within 15 minutes of being contacted. That's it. So you could be asleep and be on telehealth call. So, and most of the time, as DONs, you're on call for emergencies anyway. So instead of them calling you if they need an RN level of care, they just contact you, and y'all start a telehealth encounter. Like I said, you just have to be available and be able to connect within 15 minutes. So if you've got 8 hours, you're on call from, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Remember, we don't have to take out lunches for telehealth. So that's 8 hours of telehealth right there. You could be on a lake water skiing, and if you can connect with we use FaceTime while you're water skiing and able to perform what you need to do, the RN level of care, then that's okay. You could be shopping and just be able to need to be able to connect within 15 minutes. So just because you're on telehealth call doesn't mean you have to be tied down to something. You just need to be able, the only thing you need to be tied down to is the ability to connect within 15 minutes. If you're at a place where you have no signal and can't connect via telehealth, then that could be an issue. Then you really can't be on telehealth. We need to find other means or other people to perform that telehealth call. So FaceTime will be our means of the audio video synchronized connection. We will use Apple products for telehealth, iPads, iPhones. Each QUIP facility will be provided an iPad that will stay at the facility. That's for nurses to use. And if there's more than one nurses station, they may have to flip flop or use the same iPad, but that's okay. And now, nursing administration that does not have a personal iPhone or iPad we will provide you an iPad as well. This iPad can be passed to other RNs on telehealth call as needed. These iPads are facility property. There's no one else. So if you need an iPad as DON, we'll provide you one, but it's not yours. It's the facility property. So if you leave or anything, go to somewhere else, that has to stay. So arranging telehealth services, the DON or administrator will communicate to facility licensed nursing staff the name of the person and contact number who will be providing telehealth services. This communication can be a physical posting at the nurses station and or an entry into point-click care communication board. The facility staff will also be made aware that they may contact the administrator or DON for any inquiries regarding the contact information for the person providing telehealth services. So ideally, if you're going, whatever you're going to be on telehealth call, put a posting at each nurse's station saying, "Hey, this is Chuck. I'm going to be on telehealth call from this time to this time. And then you need to also do this so it's always in their face. Like here at Beaumont, they have put, I will be on telehealth RN. I will be the telehealth RN this week, Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., and Friday, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. And then someone else they'll be on this weekend, Saturday 8 to 12, Sunday 8 so it's always a communication. So nurses can log in and say, hey, log into PCC and on the dashboard or communication board, it will show you who's on telehealth call. And to enter that, you just say new, type in the message that I'm going to be on telehealth call this week from this time to this time, blah, 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 save it, and it will post right there. I'm not going to do it because this is live. And then also, I think it's good to have a note or a printout of who else on call as well, posted at the nurse's station. So arranging telehealth services. When a facility staff recognizes a need for an RN level of care, they will need to contact the telehealth RN within 15 minutes. So I'm an LVN. I need the RN to help assess this resident. And I determine that at 1 o'clock. At 1:15, by 1:15, I need to contact the telehealth RN. So let's say I contact the telehealth RN at 1:15. We're within our 15-minute time frame. From that point, within 15 minutes of being contacted by the facility, the telehealth RN will need to initiate an audio-visual connection, FaceTime, with the facility to perform the RN level of care. So 1 o'clock, the need is determined. At 1:15, they call me and say, hey, I need to do a telehealth, or text me or whatever, I need some telehealth. Then you have, within 15 minutes of being contacted, which would be by 1:30, you need to start the FaceTime. Now, let's say that the facility staff recognizes a need for RN level care at 1 o'clock. They contact you at 1:05. Then the 15-minute clock starts at 1:05. So by 1:20, you need to be having a FaceTime with the resident. So what kind of services are provided by the telehealth RN? It's only used for non-emergent resident situations. If it's anything that's emergency, like a heart attack or stroke or something broke, life and limb, then they shouldn't be telehealthing. They should be 911 to get those residents out of there. But other telehealth services can be teaching, consulting, triaging, advising, assessing. And the thing with the FaceTime is that you can be looking at the resident, because the staff member at the facility can have their iPad and they're got the camera facing the resident, so you can look at all kinds of stuff. Now you may have to direct the LVN or LVN, because if it's an RN, you really don't need the telehealth, but it's not. You could also have a brand new RN that could need the assistance. But anyway, the nurse at the facility will be pointing the camera, and you can direct them. You know what? Tell me what their lung sounds like, or let me look at that wound. Or you know what? The resident y'all can be looking face to face with the resident. Maybe you're the only one that can help calm the resident down. So things like that. Services not provided by the telehealth RN. If a resident situation is potentially emergent, life or limb threatening, the facility should contact the physician or emergency medical services immediately. And also, you don't need to do telehealth for facility or scheduling or staffing like that. It's only resident related information or stuff you should be doing with the telehealth. Facility staff training. LVNs will be trained upon hire, initiation of telehealth services, and is needed on the following: how to contact the RN providing telehealth services, how to properly use the device to provide audio and visual connection with the telehealth RN, and the expectations for the use of these services as dictated by the services provided by Telehealth RN and services not provided by Telehealth RN. And this is all in the policy that I'm sending with you as well. Um, there is in this packet that I'm sending, use the Telehealth nurses station guide to in-service your LVNs, and that looks like this. That's the policy, telehealth services policy, and that will be sent with you. But that guide is this, and it's going to tell what telehealth is used for. Um, that it's not for emergencies. What can be, what we can use it for again, and then it's going to give instructions on how to connect, and it's connecting via FaceTime. And this will go step by step on with screenshots on how to connect to y'all via FaceTime. So those instructions, and that's what you can use to in-service your nurses staff, and you need to keep this at the nurses station for them to have easy access to. So documentation of a telehealth encounter. So if you have a telehealth encounter, we have to document about it. The telehealth RN will document any resident-related telehealth encounter into point-click care using the telehealth encounter assessment form. This form will include the resident consent for telehealth, the time the facility staff recognizes the need for RN level of care, time the telehealth RN was initially contacted, time the audio visual connection started, the documentation of services provided, and the documentation of the outcome of the services. So I'll show you a sample of that in PCC. We'll just go to any resident discharged. So let's say you have an encounter, and all of you have remote access to PCC. So after you have the encounter, you can come in and document, or you can document it about the next day once you've figured out. But we have to document these encounters. So you go into a residence chart, go to assessments, go to new, and you got to go to telehealth encounter. And then you save, and it'll take you into that encounter. So the resident or resident representative has consented to telehealth services. They must consent. And let's look back real quick. On all new admissions for your facility, the telehealth consent is automatically triggered and should pop up. So in this, it says, I consent to the telehealth services by this facility, and it tells what telehealth is, and then who provided the verbal or telephone consent. If it's a resident, then that's it. If it's a resident representative, then you need to put the name of the resident representative, save it, and there you go. There's your consent. Or you could just verbally ask the resident, do they consent when you're doing the encounter. So let's go back into the encounter. Does a resident consent? Yes, because if they don't consent, we can't do the telehealth. So the time that the recognized need of RN level of service. So you got to put the date and the time. And then there's a little notification here, a little instructions. The time the RN need is identified until the telehealth request was made cannot exceed 15 minutes. So then you have the time of request of telehealth was made. So the nurse says at 3 a.m., you know what? I need an RN. There's not one in the building, so I need to, contact them. So then they text you or whatever and say, hey, I need some telehealth on this. That can't exceed 15 minutes from this 3 o'clock. So if it's 03:16, that exceeded the 15 minutes, and we can't count this. So it needs to be within 15 minutes. Now within 15 minutes of this time is the time that we need to make the audio video connection, the telehealth encounter. So we just put that there, and that needs to be within 15 minutes. So we'll say at 3:11. So we're in the 15 minutes each time. So between this time and this time can't be over 15 minutes. between this time and this time can't be over 15 minutes. And then services provided by the RN. Assess the wound, blah, 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 or talk to the resident face to face to help calm them down. Whatever you did. And what was the outcome of the RN services provided? Resident calmed down or instructed the LVN to contact the nurse practitioner to get additional orders for the infected wound or whatever. And then what was the total time in minutes that you were on the telehealth encounter? Let's say it's 3 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Then you're going to save and sign it just like you would any other UDA, and you're done. Let me delete this because this is not real, but it is live. Let's go back to our thing here. All right, so if unable to meet the time requirements, which means that if we exceed either of those 15 minutes from time to time, then if we don't meet those time requirements, then we automatically have to take 30 minutes of telehealth coverage out from the total coverage. So let's say you're on telehealth from midnight to 8 a.m. There's 8 hours, right? But there's an encounter, and you miss the time frame. We go over either of the 15 minutes. Then we have to subtract 30 minutes because you remember you always have to be available, and you were not available during that time. So we're going to have to take out 30 minutes. So instead of 8 hours, you're only going to have 7.5 hours of telehealth coverage if you don't have an encounter. Now, you don't have to have any encounters to be able to count the hours. So if you go from midnight to 8 a.m., no one ever calls you, but you're on telehealth call, we can count the 8 hours. It's just that if they are contacted and you don't meet the time requirements, then we do lose 30 minutes. So, currently you're available by phone all the time, but now you have the video component added to that on-call via FaceTime. So if an RN level of need is required instead of a call, it should be a FaceTime. There's great benefits to this. We could probably prevent rehospitalizations or get residents treated faster. You may not have surprises when you come in on Monday. So we really need to push this and use this. DONs or any salaried RN will have the timesheet function turned on in their Dayforce app. The timesheet function allows them to select a different job code other than their primary duty as DON, ADON, or MDS case manager. Telehealth will be the job code that is entered while on telehealth call. So let's go over, in this packet that you have, there is instructions on how to add telehealth time on your Dayforce app, either on your Apple device or your Android device. So there's step-by-step instructions. And then we also have instructions on how you can do it on the web-based version. Step-by-step with screenshots. So we're going to kind of play around with that in Dayforce. Let me log in here. Figure out how to do it. There we go. So we're logging in the Dayforce. And that's going to... Okay, so we're going to do this live in Dayforce on how to log in these hours. So I said typically, especially if you're DON or salaried RN, your hours are going to be pre-filled, like your normal hours, like 8 to 4:30, 8 to 5, whatever. And it's going to be in there. But when you're going to need to use this for is when you do telehealth. and or if you need to choose another position to where you're performing direct care duties. So let's first we're going to do telehealth. So what you're going to do is you're going to click employee timesheet, and the screen's going to refresh, and you're going to go to all the dates and all that stuff, and you can move to and from dates. If you happen to move you to a date that is in a locked pay period, which means that payroll's already been processed and all that stuff, then it's not going to allow you to do that. So in those cases, if you need to add something, like for telehealth or you performed a direct care duty, then you need to do a TCA and give to your HR, and they can send that up and get those hours entered. Okay. So what you're going to do, we're in a, especially since we're in an open pay period and we can edit all we want, you're going to come to the day. So we're going to do Saturday, January 4th. And I'm going to hit that plus sign. And it's going to give this drop down. Now, a lot of this is going to be pre-filled with your facility and all that stuff and your title and all that. But what we need to work on is you got to be sure, especially for telehealth, that you see telehealth 3 times on this entry. Okay. So we're going to say we're going to do telehealth RN, and then we're going to drop down here and scroll down. We're going to choose telehealth RN again, and we're going to choose here. Now here I'm choosing a facility. You're not going to need to choose a facility because your facility is going to be entered, but there's a facility. And then this last spot here is going to be telehealth RN. So remember, it has to say 3 times telehealth RN. So tell it 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to change the time. So if it was, whoops, let me go in here. So if it was 1 a.m., you need to do 01. Do it that way. And if you use military time, it does pretty good. I think. Let's try here. So let's say 1300. Yeah. If you use military time, it does great. So you would put in the to and from time that you're on telehealth RN. And then once you get all that entered, you have to come over here and hit save. And so you would just save it. And now it's good. And you'll see down here, success, changes saved successfully. Now you can also edit this. You can go in here and you can change some times. If you know what, I meant to put 11 a.m. And you can just change that to A. So we put that in there. Then remember, if you make any changes, you just got to save it. Or if you forgot to put the telehealth RN in there, you can go in there and save it. Okay? So I'll save that. And also what should be in here is your automatic RN time. So you may need to add something else. So, your automatic RN time or your DON time is going to be, let's say, again, 8 to 4:30, 8 hours. And then you add in your telehealth time. Now, let's say that you have to add in 2 separate telehealth times. You just go in and you just hit plus sign, and you'll add another entry, just like you did here. Or let's say that, I can X out of that. You should want to delete that. Yes. Let's say that in some cases where you worked 8 to 4:30 as DON, but then you had to work the floor as a charge nurse. In order to be able to count that for QUIP, you have to make that change in here as well. So I'm gonna hit plus. I'm gonna add a what I did, and so it's none of that. For me, it's not y'all. Mine's a little bit different. So you won't do telehealth, but you're gonna say you worked as, whoops, hold on, not a dietitian because that's not gonna give us anything. You worked as an RN charge, and then of course your facility is gonna be um, preloaded, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you come down here and you're going to leave that blank. So you're going to be the RN charge nurse. You're not going to say telehealth, especially if you work the floor. You're just going to say I worked as an RN charge nurse from 1800, which is 6 o'clock, or we'll say 1700. 1700 to 2200. 10 o'clock. So from 5 to 10, I worked as a RN charge nurse. I saved that, and we're good to go. Of course, you got to come up here when you save it. If you just enter it right here and you leave this screen, this will not save. You always got to hit save. And that's how you enter telehealth, and that's how you enter when you do other duties besides your DON duties or MDS duties or anything like that. You got to make that change if you work direct care. You got to make those changes. Now, if you cover the floor for 15 minutes during your shift while someone goes take a lunch, don't worry about going in here and doing all that. Just if you work above and beyond your normal 8 hours as DON duties and you have to do something else, or you know what, if you have to come in on a Saturday and perform weekend RN coverage, don't do it as DON. Add it as weekend RN or RN charge nurse or whatever. If you do it as DON, it's not going to give us the direct care that we want. So I'm going to delete those because this is live. So that's how you do that. In addition, other direct care job-related job codes, charge nurse, treatment nurse, staff nurse, will be available. We went over that. So if performing direct care duties while in the facility, the job code can be changed to reflect that duty and the times entered that they are performing that duty. And we went over the Dayforce instructions. Like I said, you'll have a phone-based instructions and you got a web-based instructions. Both of those are in this packet that I sent in this email. So our goal is to get 16 hours of RN coverage every day. Telehealth will be used to supplement direct care's hours as needed. Telehealth should be used during times outside of the CMS mandate of 8 hours, and there is no RN in the facility providing direct care. So telehealth could be good, especially if you're the DON and you want to be in touch with your residents and you want to assess them. You can do it. But it's not mandated that you post it and all that stuff. It's while there is other RNs in the facility. As long as the pay period is open, we just kind of went over that you can adjust your hours for any day or time they perform telehealth services or direct care services. No need for TCAs unless the pay period is closed. Remember, if the pay period is closed and it won't let you edit, then you have to do a TCA, give it to HR, and they'll get that situated for you. So when DONs leave the facility for the day, they can access the Dayforce app and turn on the telehealth job code. So let's say I'm the DON from 8 to 5, and I'm going to do telehealth from 5 to midnight. Then you have to go in there and adjust your telehealth just like we did. It has to be done if you do that, if that's your hours. Availability: if the DON is not available for any reason, the DON and administrator can arrange for another facility RN to take any telehealth care needs, call needs. If the DON is not available, adjust telehealth hours in Dayforce as needed. Also, if you're on PTO, you can't do telehealth. So if you're on PTO, don't schedule yourself as telehealth. Get with your compliance nurse and all that. They can do telehealth for you if needed. It's all it takes is an RN to do the telehealth. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be the DON. It just has to be an RN. If the facility is unable to come up with their own RN, then they can contact their ADO and compliance nurse. If needed, the compliance nurse could be the on-call telehealth. We just went over that. Again, it's not a requirement if there's an RN at the facility, but the benefit of having telehealth available as much as possible is a great benefit for our residents. We'll be able to provide better coordination of resident care. Compensation. You ain't got to do this for free. So compensation is $6.25 per hour for telehealth coverage. That is above and beyond your salary uh, compensation. So this is a way to get some extra cash. So it's $6.25 for being on call for telehealth coverage. So again, if you're taking telehealth call from midnight to 7 a.m., that's 7 hours, and you're asleep during that time, you get $6.25 for being on call for telehealth. Telehealth. This is only telehealth. So the number of hours that will be compensated. Now there's a limit to what we're going to compensate. Okay, so you don't think I'm going to throw on 24 hours of telehealth and get all this money. No, there's a limit. So the number of hours that will be compensated for telehealth coverage from midnight to midnight each day will be the number of hours needed to reach 16 hours of total RN coverage plus one additional hour with a maximum of 9 hours per day for telehealth. So example, you have 3 hours of telehealth is required for a day. The maximum number of telehealth hours that will be compensated is 4 hours. So you could be on call for telehealth for 16 hours, but you only needed 3. You're only going to get paid for 4. So we're going to go above and beyond what we need by 1 hour. Another example is we have 8 hours of telehealth is required for a day. The maximum number of telehealth hours that will be compensated is 9 hours. But you know what? 9 hours times 6.25, that's $56. I'll take $56. And then if you reach the 8-hour metric, let's say that, because this is all quip related, if you meet the 90%, which means that you didn't have more than 3 days of RN coverage that was missed, you have, when I say 8-hour metric, I mean a total of 16 hours. If you meet that, then you get a $250 bonus for the month. Now you'll see all kinds of tracking, and everyone's kind of there's going to be several people looking at this, and it may get with you and say, hey, did you enter hours for this, or did you blah blah blah, and we use that in data IQ. So we'll be we really monitor this, and we'll be following up with you if we see some hours that have you entered the hours for this day or blah blah blah. So again, you're not doing it for free, and again, we can get you compensated for that. And $250 for reaching that metric is that's pretty good. That's on top of what you're on call for, the call criteria. All right, so that's it. If you have any questions at all, get with me, Shannon Romero, your compliance nurse, and we'll be happy to help you out. All right, so thank you, everyone. And again, if you have any questions, just let us know.